Hey guys, Third and Only here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be painting this Chaos guy. For quite a long time I didn't actually know who he was, but I saw him on eBay a while ago, and I really like this era of Warhammer model. It's not really nostalgia, I wasn't alive when these models are out, but there's something about the old metal handcrafted style that really appeals to me. The metal models have quite a lot of cleaning up to do usually, and this one's already been primed once. I don't think any of it was too heinous on this guy, though this slot had to be removed. I don't know what it was originally for. He was a charioteer, so where would that go in? I'm not really sure, but it had to go. But his feet were slightly uneven, so some debris, including this half brick, were glued onto the base, just to give him a better standing point. He himself was then glued on afterwards. Though I thought the base was still a little bit bland, so I turned to the skeletons box. These are from the Tomb Kings, but I think if you've got old enough normal skeletons, then you'll find them there as well. These little arrow pieces, which I then cut diagonally and glued into the base as if he's being shot at, mid-battle sort of thing. And then the model was assembled, and he was ready to be painted. This model doesn't actually fit into any of my armies, and so it's the perfect time to experiment with some new techniques. And the first of these that I'm going to experiment with today is non-metallic metal. In fact, it's going to be the main one that I experiment with throughout the entirety of this video. It's a process that is daunting to a heck of a lot of people. It's not nearly as complicated as you might think. In these clips here, I'm beginning to lay down the most important part of non-metallic metal. It barely matters what colours you use. I mean, it will depend on what metal you're trying to paint. It's like painting normal surfaces, only you've just got to get that jump in contrast over a smaller area. And even if you had flat lines at the edge of every colour, provided you place them in the right place, then you'll be alright. In this here, I was using Rhinox Hide, Tau-like Ochre, and XV88, and then eventually white. And just going up through these colours, the only thing that I'm really thinking about as I paint the rest of the model is where is the light coming from above, and where would it reflect back off the ground below. Now, if you want to get properly techie with this, the light that you can reflect back can be whatever the colour of the ground is. So if you're painting a silver and there's a green grass field underneath them, then paint that reflection in with green. Here it's gold, and to be honest I'm a little bit scared of painting the non-metallic metal gold. Though it has come out very well, I don't think I'm ready to mix in the colours there yet. Now, as soon as I finished with this non-metallic metal gold, I was not really in the mood to do any more. But upon asking some of my friends what colours they thought would go well on the main body of the armour, overwhelmingly, steel was the answer. Now, I paint a heck of a lot of grey. If you've seen my Inquisitorial Strike Force videos, you'll know that. So I decided to mix in a bit of blue with some of the darker shades of grey here. And here you can see exactly what I'm talking about with the blending. I've not done an enormously good job of blending here, but it's about where you place these highlights. Just remember, light from above and then light from below. I then moved on to painting some other details, like the leather parts, which is mainly the gloves, but he has a belt as well. For these I used Rhinox Hide and Gothor Brown. I used a mix in the midpoint and then a really small highlight of the Gothor Brown itself. This is a fantastic recipe for leather. I decided I want some more contrast, and so mixed Rhinox Hide and black and glazed that in. Painting the red was done next. This was with corn red with various mixes of black. And I decided that I wanted the main points of colour to be on his shoulder pad near the skull and on the plume of his helmet. So these were just painted in with successive layers of brighter and brighter mixes of corn red and black, eventually just corn red on its own. I used this sort of overbrushing technique when it came to the plume on the helmet because I'm not highlighting each one of those strands individually, but in some places I did dip into the recesses, so this mix, this sort of dark red glaze was made and done over the whole thing, to bump up the saturation in the shadows, but also to redefine some of those individual strands. Next I painted all of the skulls on the model, or the two on his armour. I started off with Gothor Brown. This is more or less my go-to recipe for bone as well. I do the same thing in my Inquisitorial Strike Force video, but this gives you a better look at exactly what I'm doing. First off, cover absolutely all of the bone with Gothor Brown. It's going to be the sort of brown, deepest points of shadow. And then go over just the higher areas with Baneblade Brown. So avoiding all of the deepest recesses, but still covering almost all of the surface. And then after that, doing almost exactly the same thing again over an even smaller area with Screaming Skull. As you can see, at first the jumps in contrast are quite big, but when everything's been built up properly, it ends up looking quite nice. I did want to add some extra detail with these cracks in the skull. They might not really have paid off exactly how I'd imagined, but I think they're probably better there than not. And now, I mentioned earlier that I wanted to be a bit more adventurous with this video, and I barely ever paint green. It's more or less just Skaven Plague Monks that I've ever painted that way. And so I decided for his whip, it could be an actual sort of thing of thorns. You know, he's chaos, why couldn't his whip be actually a plant? And also I love thorns. Thorns are cool, and so instead of just being a spiked whip, it was going to be an actual living plant. This is one of the parts of this model that really screams the classic Warhammer-y style. And as you can see here, things didn't quite go as planned. This green is entirely too bright. And looking back on the model, I think it's possible that this would have been better painted some other colour. But painting in the thorns red, I think it did end up looking alright. It drew various points of the model together, the red from the body to the green, and then the green will eventually be on the base. But it's one of the sections that I think I'm going to learn from. And as you can see, I've already had to go back and darken things down again with this. I actually didn't use any washes on this model at all. That's just a glaze of, it's just watered down black. And here I'm spreading out some texture paste, which you can barely see, but, you know, trust me, I did it. And then it was time for something that was honestly a bit dumb to do at this stage. I wanted to do a bit of that I was talking about earlier, of glazing in the color that's being reflected up into the reflections on the non-metallic metal. Now, for some reason, I thought I'll do this with brown, even though I knew full well that I entirely intended to make the base green in a second. But I did do this in some other areas to more effect, such as glazing in some red around the plume. And the details on the base painted in, like this arrow, and also this brick, which I was unusually proud of myself for making brick coloured. I almost always just go stone colour, sort of grey. And then I put some tufts on, and immediately decided that I thought the tufts looked terrible, and spread some watered down PVA over the base. And then for the first time ever, I decided to use flocking on a miniature base. I don't know why I've never done this. I think I just always assumed it wouldn't look very good, but it looked a heck of a lot better than tufts, in this case anyway. And then once that was all done, I'll show you what it all looked like.